This week on The Writer's Journey, we continue our conversation with the author of Skyman Battles the Master of Steam, Brian K. Morris. This is part 2 of our interview, and I hope you stick around and watch it. So let's get into it. Okay, so you're a full-time writer.
Yes.
What's that entail?
Well, I'm also a full-time house husband because my wife still has a job. Many writers have a spouse or a job themselves, for the benefits like insurance and things like that, plus guaranteed money. Because I always tell people, if you want to make money being a writer, learn to weld. They're always looking for welders, and you can do that. You can write on your lunch hour. But for me, um, well, like a typical day is getting up, making sure my wife goes to work, making sure she has breakfast, and then more often than not going back to bed. But there's laundry to do, there's dishes to do, there's all kinds of stuff just in the house itself. There's repairs I've got to make or phone calls I've got to make for the house or our just basic day to day living, and I make those as quickly as possible during business hours. uh, I like to write in the morning. I frequently do writing sprints where I will set a timer for 10, 20, 30 minutes and just block everything out. And all I do is write, 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 write. And then when that's done, I get up, walk around, maybe get another cup of coffee, and then sit back down and do it again until I'm mentally tired. And then some things like promotion I do as soon as I can, because it's not as much fun as the writing is,
But
but
it's necessary.
but it is absolutely necessary. And here's a pro tip, kids, that if you are working in traditional or self-publishing, you still have to promote yourself. You can't rely on anyone else to do it. And it can be as simple as just simply getting online and saying, hey, I'm working on my new novel today, or give a teaser for it, or remind people that if you are published already, you have a back catalog. And you're going, Brian, that's not fun every day. That sounds pretty much like work. Well, yeah, that's another four-letter word. But the thing is, pardon me while I take over your show. But but the thing is, when you have a 9 to 5, you have to do for someone else a lot of things that you would not normally want to do. Like, I was a manager at a big box office supply store. We'll call it that because they didn't pay for any advertising.
Right.
Um, I was a manager in that building. I still had to clean the toilets because somebody's got to do it. And again, if you're looking at this like a job, somebody's going to have to do the toilets and the promotion. And sometimes you're the only person around that has to do it. So, sorry.
And to promote is getting people to know you as a person.
Right.
Yes, it's important to promote your book,
Yes.
but you want people to know who you are as the writer. So
Right.
that if they can learn a little bit about you, Brian K. Morris,
Right.
when they read your work, they can say, "Oh, well, I see Brian in these stories."
Yeah. Somebody once read one of my short stories and said, I can hear Brian's voice in my head. Well, first of all, the idea that my voice was in their head made them very uncomfortable, but it meant that I had succeeded in the writing. That, like you said, they heard it in my unique voice,
Right.
and that makes me happy. Um, but in order to get that down, you've got to do all this other stuff because you can't ignore all of it, especially if you have a partner who goes out into the real world and earns the paychecks and stuff. You got to take your share of the burden here. And then moving on to my day, I make dinner usually, and then we just kind of chill for a little bit. She gets up very early, so she goes to bed. And for some reason, after about 7 o'clock at night, I get this burst of energy that I use it, and I sit and I write as much as I can. I try to get at least 500 words a day done. Frequently, I get far more than that, depending on the interruptions. I try to limit my time online just chatting with people, which sounds horribly rude, but this, I traded in 13 years ago, I traded in a 40-hour a week job for something that takes up every waking hour of my life. And I've never been happier, is the thing, because this is something I've wanted to do since seventh grade when my mother told me that someone got paid to put the words in the word balloons of my comic books. I thought that's the life I want to live. So it's, you just have to figure out, we used to call them biorhythms back in the 70s, when you are most creative, when you feel the most energy to do this, and then you just have to figure out what your schedule is. But there are just some things you have to take care of, and it will cut into your writing time, so you just figure out when the best time to write will be.
So, for those who are watching, tell us a little bit more about Brian K. Morris.
Oh.
Where did you go to school?
Okay.
Where did you learn to write?
Okay.
And what influenced you to be?
Okay. Well, I years ago I used to think it started in seventh grade when I had given one of those internally dull "What did you do over your Christmas holiday?" We had Christmas like everyone else, and I came from a small town in East Central Illinois where I, even as a younger child, I had an aptitude for writing. I just happened to have one. And so I would usually wind up reading my stuff first because everybody else was boring. And one time for this Christmas extravaganza, I was trying to describe that our tree was lit up in front of my teetotaling parents. Well, due to an awkward phrasing in there, I made it sound like my teetotaling parents were what was lit up. And this led to my teacher bawling me out, who told the principal, who bawled me out, who ratted on me to my parents, which made for a very uncomfortable evening that night. So I figured I better learn how to do this communication thing a lot better. But I finally realized that it started when I was about 3 years old. At that time, my parents lived in the country, and my father had a full-time job. My mother was raising me, and I think it really started one morning when we were having breakfast. And I've told this story frequently, but I'm looking at the cornflakes box with the rooster on it,
Right.
Kellogg's cornflakes, and then my mother had like corn checks or something, and she's looking at the back of the box, and at the time they had this little fake newspaper called the Checkerboard Express, and it was jokes and odd facts and cartoons and things like that. And she's reading this and enjoying it. And I'm just wondering I asked my mother, how did you pick these cereals? I get the rooster. I see that on TV. But how did you know that you like Chex cereal? I heard you call it Chex. And she says, because the words on there. It's what you're speaking right now. This is how you see them. And she explained the whole process to me. And I said, well, can you teach me how to read? And she did. So I entered. It was before, we were. This was a time when our school system did not require preschool. So I went into first grade, and I had a fourth grade reading level, and also because my mother also allowed me to read comic books, I was the only kid in first grade that knew the word invulnerable and could spell it. But from there, it was just like standard rules of grammar, trying to absorb those. And then, like I said, mom said that somebody gets paid to put in the words in the word balloons in comics. Huzzah! I have found my calling. And so I proceeded to read The Writer and Writer's Digest every month, got an idea on how to submit to a publisher, which I did with little to no success. But you just keep trying it, keep refining your process. I have a collection of rejection slips where I almost got in. I just came real close where they didn't send me the boilerplate "you are being rejected" letter because we can't use your writing because of reason. This is the boilerplate letter that said you almost made it, keep trying. So I was getting that encouragement. And then in 1997, of course, by that time I was writing like ad copy for wherever I worked. I was writing for some fanzines. I was writing letters to comic books. I was just doing everything. I wrote business plans for other people. And in '97, a friend of mine who was on the board of directors for the Red Mask Players in Danville, Illinois, where Dick Van Dyke once trod the boards. Um, he calls me and says, we're having a fundraiser and we're doing local one act plays. And I'm like, what does this have to do with me? He said, you're writing a play for me. I said, you're out of your mind. I've never written a play before. He said, yeah, but you haven't written a lot of things before and you went and learned how to do it. You've got 6 weeks. I want a play I can read. Because a lot of the plays they were getting were not production quality, let's say.
Okay.
And so I went down to my local library. I picked out some play scripts. I picked out a couple books on how to write plays. And then I launched into it and I wound up becoming a playwright, because they produced my play. And from there, now here's where we do something called parlaying. I call parlaying your credits, because I went through to everyone after the first night of the play, and I'd been scared crapless at how everyone would receive it. Turned out they loved it. So I went up to the various actors, and each one said, thank you for writing that play. That was so much fun. And I'm sorry for what happened. What happened? There's someone else. Go talk to them. And finally, they passed me around the room like I'd soiled my diapers or something. And finally, we got to the last person, who happened to be the director. Well, it turned out that one of the cast members vanished during the last week of rehearsal. The director had to memorize the script overnight and step into the role. And during the show, he skipped like 3 pages of dialogue. It's just stuff that set up jokes and clues for the murder, nothing serious. And they thought I was going to kill him. But I started laughing because I told him, I said, I'm the guy that wrote the thing, and I didn't notice. I was so scared. And the next night during the cast party, they gave me this little mock award. It was made of stained plywood for not killing him. And but the thing was, devious, a little larceny in everything we do. I thought to myself, I wrote a play. I got an award. It's not really germane to the play I wrote, but I am now an award-winning playwright. And so I put this in quotes in like everything I do. Brian K. Morris lives in the Midwest with his wife, and he's an award-winning playwright. And in the 25 plus years I have used that method, I have only had 3 people ask me why it's in quotations, and none of them were publishers, editors, or writers. And so, but what I did from that point on, I saw some opportunities opening up in the writing field for me. So I would write them, and I'd say, I would like to write for you. Here's this idea I have. And by the way, I'm an award-winning playwright. And they don't see the quotes either. And I got a job transcribing interviews for various magazines. And I put in there, oh, by the way, I could type 120 words a minute, and I'm an award-winning playwright. And they all go, ooh, award-winning, huh? Playwright. And so then I, finally, I would add this and all the other credits I was accruing at the same time. So I was kind of padding my resume, as it were. And finally, in 2023, I won the Pulp Factory Award, which is an industry award for what you and I do.
Right.
And I won it for writing a short story for Bobby Nash and his Abraham Snow character. And I won the short story award that year. So now I'm legit. So I don't have to put nothing in quotes anymore. But this is how everything led up to that moment. My being an award winner.
So writing has always been a part of your life, it seems like, just from as far back as you can remember.
Yeah.
In the comics and books, and then being the playwright. And here you are now.
Yeah.
All these years later, and you're still pushing those stories out, still striving to entertain people.
Yes. And that's basically one of the nicest compliments I got recently was from Ron Fortier earlier this year at Windy City Pulp and Paper, who was introducing me on a panel and said, Brian brings a sense of fun to everything he writes. And I cannot think of too many better accolades than that. My goal when I write any story, even if it's kind of dark, is to entertain you. I'm not. I'm not really writing for a large part of it. Yes, I am writing for me per se, but I'm also writing for the editor, not really the audience, because it's the editor's job to figure out what his audience needs. My job is to please the editor. And so I'm writing it for the pair of us with the audience in mind. But I my goal is to entertain. And if I can educate somebody, if I can enlighten somebody along the way, although I don't think I have a whole lot that's original to say other than we ought to be nicer to each other. Um, Otherwise, I'm here to make you smile. I'm here to make you think just maybe a little, but to make you feel better than when you started the story.
So now we're at Pulp Fest
Yes, we are.
in Mars, Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
And tomorrow's our last day for the show.
Yeah.
And then so now for people who are watching, where are they going to find you on the internet, social media, of course, and website, and what's your next appearance?
Okay. I can be found at risingtide.pub. And from there, you can find out about how to get on my monthly email insider information. We used to call them newsletters, but that's not cool anymore. And also, I have a Patreon page, which you can connect to from my website, where I do a twice weekly blog called Every Blog Deserves a Name. And it's usually whatever's either making me insanely happy at any moment or something I want to teach people to do in the writing field, or what we call a flame this high because it burns my backside. And I'm also on Facebook. I have some broadcasting I've done on the YouTube channel. I would point you to Clever Title Pending episodes because we interview people like Charles here, who's been a guest several times, a wonderful one at that. And we interview people who are creative about creativity and the business behind it. And the business behind a lot of this is what's really important. And like I said, you need to keep yourself educated about this. As far as my next appearance, I'm going to be at a flea market in Keokuk, Iowa this coming Saturday. But if you sign up for that information newsletter that I told you about, you will find all of my appearances until the end of the year. And I'm going to be in places like Mattoon, Illinois, Evansville, Indiana at the end of the month at the Museum of Arts and Sciences. That's always a good time. And we're also going to be at in Dalton, Georgia, just any place that won't run away from me fast enough, and I will be there.
Great. It's great doing shows with you, and we won't have another one now till next year.
I know. So. And what we got to do? What 2, 3?
We did 2 this year.
2 this year.
Yeah.
That's.
We did 2 last year, I think.
Yeah, we need to do more shows together.
Need to, yeah.
Yeah, we do.
All right. Well, Brian K. Morris, thanks for joining me.
Well, thank you for having me, Charles F. Millhouse.
And thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
I'd like to thank Brian K. Morris for sitting down with me at Pulp Fest and talking about all things writing. On a personal note, I'd like to thank Brian for his contributions to me. I had been publishing since 1999, really got into it into the early 2000s. And after Captain Hawkland came out in 2012, I kept pushing forward, but I hadn't done any shows. I met Brian in 2016, 17, I think it was 2017, in Grove City, Ohio, which is right outside of Columbus. And I met him, had a nice conversation with him, and we became really close friends on Facebook, of all places. And it was his encouragement that got me out doing shows, book signings, and things like that. And without Brian K. Morris, I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing today. And if any new writer is out there, it is my advice to you to listen to Brian K. Morris because he will never steer you wrong. On that note, let's give you your moment of inspiration. Bonus question. So if you had one writer, living or deceased, that you could work with, besides me, of course, who would it be?
Asked or answered. You got it. Have a good night, kids. Anyway, no, gosh, There are so many, but I think my number one would probably be Warren Murphy, who co-created the Remo Williams character, as we discussed
Yeah, the
earlier.
Destroyer books.
Um, because I always liked his sense of humor in his writing, but he still knew how to write good adventure scenes, good exposition, make a story just fly right by you. And also, I have to say that when Facebook was in its infancy, and I had written the first book I'd ever published that was worth publishing, Bloodshot the Coldest Warrior, um, somebody asked me about how I put the book together. And Warren Murphy's website was one of my resources. That's where I learned, to comb my hair and, how to make sure my participles didn't dangle and things like that. Well, I accidentally tagged him. I didn't intend to, but then I just typed and bam, out it went. I got a DM from Warren Murphy saying, "Thank you for the shout out. Um, Congratulations on getting your book. Here's to a great career for you." And I would love to collaborate with somebody like that. And if nothing else, just to be able to show him my catalog now, which you can find at www.risingtide.pub, hashtag always promote, and to show him where his good advice led.